This is your brother, Dr. Vernon Howard, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City. As we, civil and human rights organizations like ours at SCLC, continue to wage war in the ongoing battles for justice and equity for all people, ours today is not a call to armed struggle. Ours is a war waged by nonviolent, direct action for social change, waged with spiritual fortitude, moral conviction, grounded in the Christian principles of love and justice, which we waged here in Kansas City and have been doing since 1972. Whether it was our visionary founder, the Honorable U.S. Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II, and our own beloved brother who's passed on, the Reverend Kenny Ray. Whether it was U.S. Congressman Emanuel Cleaver leading a protest on the Country Club Plaza in the early 70s, or the Reverend Nelson Fuzzy Thompson and the Honorable Bishop James D. Tyndall Sr. with the Reverend Sam Ernest Mann, organizing the most dynamic MLK celebrations in the country. SCLC of Greater Kansas City has been advocating for justice and equity for all those who seek to experience the guarantees of freedom but find impediments in our quest. We stand on the shoulders of those faithful freedom fighters such as Ida B. Wells, Rosa Parks, and countless others time does not permit me to note, took risks, suffered ridicule, who sacrificed personal gain and dedicated their to the freedom of our people. We will never forget the blood, the sweat, the tears our forebears offered to ensure we receive this honor of the baton of freedom fighter being passed on to us. That's why we partnered with the Urban Summit to bring about the One City Economic Development Sales Tax that brings $90 million into the urban core over 10 years. That's why we led the campaign for a $15 per hour living wage, even though it's being blocked by the Missouri legislature, and is the only citizen-led petition initiative in the country that has lifted the local minimum wage in a major metropolitan area. That's why we birthed the movement for Medicaid expansion in 2013 and 14, and now Medicaid expansion is a reality in Kansas City, Missouri. That's why we led the cultural movement and historical movement to ensure that there is a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Jr. Boulevard in Kansas City, and there will be a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Kansas City in 2021. And now, by the summons of the one whose name we bear, Jesus Christ, and in fulfillment of the mountaintop experience had by our national founder, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 3rd, 1968, we so move that Kansas City would ascend and arise to the mountaintop, and that Kansas City would see what we see, a vision that lifts this city, that lifts all our citizens to the level of justice and equity that all God's children deserve. We resolve, therefore, to mobilize, to organize, to vote for an end to homelessness and just housing with dignity for all, that every Kansas Citian should have the right to real affordable housing. We will mobilize, organize, and vote for high quality education and equity of education for every child K through 12, no matter his or her zip code or race. We will mobilize and organize and vote for real full employment and a living wage for every worker who takes the personal responsibility to work. We will mobilize and organize and vote for transformation of a racist Kansas City Police Department and ensure that reforms that have been passed in other places in this country are passed right here in Kansas City. We will mobilize and organize and vote for candidates who are dedicated to the full restoral of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We will mobilize, organize, and vote for candidates who are dedicated to full reparations for Black people. Economic structures of this country. Therefore, we call you to action, to join with us to ensure that this vision is fulfilled. Join us to sign up for this great movement for Kansas City at the mountaintop at SCLC-GKC.org. In order, O God, that your kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven.
Dr. Howard, we graciously appreciate it is and privilege to introduce our panelists for this evening. Three dynamic congressional leaders that are joining us. The first is Rashida Tlaib from the 13th Congressional District of Michigan, the western half of Detroit, along with several of its western suburbs, come from the 4th Congressional District of Georgia, which includes it also includes parts of Gwinnett, Newton, and Rockdale counties. Lastly, joining us as a panelist, we have Congressman Dwight Evans, who joins us from the 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, which includes most of the center, city, as well as west and northwest Philadelphia. The conversation will be moderated by our own Congressman Reverend Emanuel Cleaver, who represents the 5th Congressional District in the state of Missouri, and was noted as earlier by Dr. Howard, one of the founders for the Kansas City chapter of Greater Kansas City Southern Christian Leadership Conference here in Kansas City. And so I will turn it over to Congressman Cleaver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Howard, the president, and Wesley Fields, the chair of the board. I am very pleased to be here this evening with three of my colleagues, all three of whom I have a great deal of trust in, and they are in many ways revolutionaries in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. Join us for this MLK celebration. We've not missed a single celebration since 1972 in Kansas City, and I want to just give them a chance to open up with whatever comments that they'd like to make. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is somebody special, and I, behind her back, talk about how much I admire her and celebrate her presence with us. in Congress, and for a number of reasons. One, she and one of my guy who came on one term after me, Steve Cohen, are unique. Steve Cohen represents a congressional district that is 72% African American. He is Jewish, and he has. I went down and campaigned for him in his first re-election, and people wonder why would I go in and campaign for a non-African American in Memphis, and I think that question has been answered by anybody who pays attention to Congress. Rashida Tlaib is the same, representing Detroit and a significantly African American district, and she is winning. We thought she was going to have a difficult race this last time. She whipped them, and so she is back again. And so, and Michigan is one of the states that, of course, helped Joe Biden become president. Hank Johnson has been here for a while. He would be, after me, the senior member of the panelists tonight. And he is from Georgia. As I mentioned last week, he has been a trial lawyer, and he has come to come to Washington, and he makes no apologies for his strong and tough positions. As those of you who have been keeping up with the news, you know that he is out front and very outspoken. He does not hold back. Dwight Evans is from Philadelphia. He can come here faster than any of us via Amtrak, and he has come in and been someone that I admire a great deal. And Philadelphia is one of the cities in one of the states that helped put Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I need to add, into the White House. But based on how we do business in Washington, I'm going to ask if the three of you would make 3 minutes, like as it relates to Dr. King, what's going on, maybe even here in Washington right now, and where do you think we need to go from here? So I'll start out with the senior member, Hank Johnson from Georgia.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Pastor. And my friend, Emmanuel Cleaver. Since I have been in Congress, I have come to know Emmanuel Cleaver as first a good man, and second as a pastor, and third as a congressman. And in fact, we rely upon him to minister to the Democrats in our caucus. I mean, he is our caucus pastor, and I say that fondly, thinking of all of the times that he has uplifted us at times when we were down collectively, at times when our backs were against the wall, and we, as a body, needed a way forward. And it has always been the kind and gentle words of Emmanuel Cleaver, based on scripture, with a pinch of humor in it, that has sustained us and pulled us forward and continues to do so. So I want to thank him for inviting me to be a part of this celebration today. Since 1972, the SCLC Greater Kansas City Chapter has done an MLK celebration. When it wasn't cool, they were doing it, and still doing it today. And I tell you that the dilemma that we faced in 72, and really going back to 62, going up to 68 and on forward, continues to this day. I mean, back then it was a matter of jobs and justice, and today is jobs and justice, and it's also healthcare. It was healthcare back then. So we've been fighting this battle, and we've made, Pastor, a lot of progress. but we still are fighting fundamental battles. We've just about gotten it whipped. And that's why we have seen a spasm of violence that has reared up. It reared up in a big way on January 6th in our edifice here in Washington, D.C., the United States Capitol, edifice of government service, restrained. And it is threatening us again on January 20th. And so these are tough times that we're living in, but we have made it this far, and we didn't come this far to turn back. We were not allowed to get this far thinking that we would turn back. We're not going to turn back. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to break the back once and for all of injustice, of inequality, of poverty, of ignorance, of hate. We as a people must break through that, and it's with kind-heartedness and gentleness, a spirit of nonviolence. These are the things that Dr. King stood for. He modeled himself after Jesus, and he adopted the philosophy of nonviolence from India, from Gandhi. He was a universal thinker, and he said that we were all interrelated and interdependent, and now more so than ever. And so we need to start living like that. And so with that, Pastor, I will kick it back to you.
Thank you, Representative. The next would be Dwight Evans from Pennsylvania. And it may be important for me to mention before he speaks is that the things that matter to, I think, if Dr. King were around today, would be human rights. And we get scored in Congress on everything we do. So if the organized labor scores us, Planned Parenthood scores us, Children's Defense Fund scores us, the rap people in Los Angeles scores, I mean, everybody scores us. But it's worth noting that Congressman Dwight Evans has a 100% on human rights. Congressman Dwight Evans from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Cleveland, for that introduction. And there's a few things I'd like to say about Cleveland that I had never said to him before, but I'm gonna say it now. As Hank Johnson just described, if anybody was our spiritual leader, he has that role. And in the 4 years that I've been there, he's been someone who has uplifted everyone, even those who I don't think he doesn't like anybody, but he clearly has shown the ability to bring people together and to carry a message that we all value. Clearly tell you if you are not legitimate, but he will say what's not legitimate. But I know for me personally, in my 4 years of being there in Washington, he has made a real difference. I've watched him in action. I've listened to his words. And when he speaks, everyone listens, everyone. And I mean, that's across the board. He has a way of resonating points across to all of us. So it is very appropriate that he would be a part of this, just in this moment that we are in this country at this particular time, because we need someone who has the ability to connect. So I want to say thank you to him on a personal note because of what he has done and what I have never said to him before, but I thank you for always being available, to being that shoulder and being that ear. I thank you very much. You know, Dr. King would have been 92 years old, 92 years old. And I was at a location in my district today, Girard College, which is a facility that had not let young African-American boys in, and basically it was only whites. And Dr. King walked around that wall with a gentleman by the name of Cecil Moore, and other individuals you may be familiar with, but he was the one that was carrying a message. And that message was a sense of hope. Dr. King had a way of affecting all of us similar to the way Cleveland did. He had a way of carrying that message and being relentless. In the time that I watched him as a kid, I tell you, I learned a lot from another one of my heroes who I will talk about, John Lewis, who I served on the Ways and Means Committee, and I learned a great deal from him. It's similar to, as Dr. King would call him, the boy from Troy, where John Lewis talked about the aspect, if you see something, do something. And I believe that that message John Lewis got from Dr. Martin Luther King. And that message carried down to all of us. That message shaped us all. We are in trying times, difficult times, times that require a sense of leadership like I've never seen before. That came through Dr. Martin Luther King. It led up to John's leadership. All of us have a duty and a responsibility and obligation to do. And I'm glad, Cleveland, that you have allowed me to be a part of this session, to have this dialogue and this discussion today. Because I share with this dialogue and discussion, it really says to us that we have to be more dedicated and rededicate ourselves to dealing with these challenges. I look forward to this discussion, and I'll be more happy. Thank you, Cleveland.
Thank you very much. Rashida Tlaib from Michigan, I got to say, Steny Hoyer had asked me to go on a trip he took, which would be into the Middle East, and I couldn't make the trip. And when he came back, he told me that he had met Rashida Tlaib's grandmother over in Palestine, and that it was one of the highlights of his trip around the Middle East. And she is somebody who is on the job and speaks her mind, and I love it. We're on the same committee, Financial Services Committee. Representative Tlaib.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And just want to echo what my colleagues said. So for all of you, your congressman, Reverend Cleaver, first time I'm in caucus, we get this envelope with the agenda, of course, and when we were able to do it in person, now we get it through email. But Reverend Cleaver is very right. Hank is right. He would minister. I mean, there was this beautiful one pager that's always in there with this very attractive photo that draws you in. And then there's scripture or quote, maybe around just dark times. Much of it is very inspiring. So he continues to do that. Again, I had never met him, but for that, and then all of a sudden we served on Financial Services Committee. So you all know I'm one of the first Muslim women to ever be elected to the United States Congress, and to an institution I think that wasn't really ready for me. And it was a really hard step. I came in there like a firecracker, as Reverend will tell you, but he wasn't scared of me. He approached me. He spoke to me as a sister. He continues to mentor me. I'm much more graceful because of Reverend Cleaver, but sometimes he lets me go, and sometimes I need to. Especially today, as we celebrate Dr. King's legacy, it's been so hard. I get emotional today as I see so many of my colleagues quoting. I mean, from McConnell to others, and I know I don't want to bring these dark times here, but to see people that are blocking the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to see the same people that invoked violence and promoted white supremacy, to quote, I grew up the eldest of 14, so I'm a bit of a mama bear. And I grew up in one of the most beautiful Blackest cities in the country, in the city of Detroit. And I was taught by Black mothers who told my mother, raise your voice, because she had a heavy accent. Speak up, Fatima, they would tell her. So I grew up knowing that, speaking truth to power is critically important to continue to pursue justice. And I hope in this panel that we not only talk about the civil rights movement, but we talk about the fact that we are dealing with a poverty crisis in our country. where 8 million of our neighbors are now forced into poverty because of the pandemic. Much of what was happening before the pandemic, and Hank talked about healthcare, he talked about all these other issues. All of that is still existing, and it is systematic racism. It is policies that continue to lock up our Black brothers and sisters, to allow them to contract at a higher rate COVID than any other community. I represent the third poorest congressional district, so I'm passionate. So sometimes that passion comes out as anger, but I'll tell you, many of my colleagues, Rev, get away with that anger, where mine is policed, silenced, suppressed. And when they try to do that, they're suppressing and oppressing, continuing my neighbors who just want to live freely, truly free, as Dr. King asked all of us. So I know so many want to quote what they want to quote, and they like to quote, but there's one quote that in a church, Rev, so forgive me, I quoted it today in one of my churches in my district. And, you know, it is something that really resonated with me today. And it's something Dr. King said, and again, rarely gets quoted, but he said, if America does not use her vast resources of wealth to end poverty and make it possible for all God's children to have basic necessities of life, she too will go to hell. And it resonates. And it's passion that comes out of me to understand that we need to stop that kind of injustice, because poverty is traumatic. It is a form of oppression. And when I hear a mother in her 40s talk about being in the back seat at a food bank line in the back seat with her mother to go and get food, to get the help she needs, she never could have imagined graduating from high school, getting a good paying job, that she now in her 40s have her children in the back seat of her car, getting into the food bank line. And so we need to really continue that legacy, not only of those that continue to talk about desegregation and so forth, absolutely, but I think at the core of what he was trying to do, at the core of what he was trying to really display, even towards the end of his years, was to truly combat poverty, which is so connected to so many injustices with so many of our Black neighbors across the country.
I'm supposed to ask you guys some questions. I'll start out with Hank Johnson. And I failed to say, I got my start in SCLC, and SCLC is essentially an Atlanta-based operation, although the founders, two of whom claim me as their son in the ministry, Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, Joe Lowry, joined in with C.K. Steele, Fred Shuttlesworth, and Ralph Abernathy to form SCLC. And the office is there at 334 Auburn Avenue Northeast. And that is in Atlanta, Georgia, not far from downtown. So maybe we ought to start off with you, Representative Hank Johnson, about if you could tell the participants, and I thank God we got a large crowd tonight, but if you could tell them about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I think people hear about voting rights. I'm not sure that they have an understanding about the part that we have to have reestablished that was knocked out. So can you go through our voting rights effort?
Yeah, you know, John Lewis, when he crossed that Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965, shed a little blood along with others. It was called Bloody Sunday. And people who are as old as I can remember viewing that on a Sunday afternoon, watching it on TV, and they remember the watershed moment that it was. It was like the George Floyd killing, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You could not deny that injustice was occurring. And that same moment occurred on Bloody Sunday, 65, and it led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act, which was signed into law by President Johnson. And when he signed that Voting Rights Act into law, he said that I'm pretty much the Democratic Party is going to lose all of its white supporters because of what I'm doing. Because when he signed that Voting Rights Act, it eliminated the things that John Lewis used to talk about, having to guess how many jelly beans, how many black jelly beans were in a big jar of jelly beans before you could be approved, and tactics that were used to keep black people from voting. Well, they instantly went away when Lyndon Johnson signed that Voting Rights Act. And you saw right after that, the next election, black people elected to office because black people registered to vote and they got out and voted. They did the same thing, by the way, despite a lot of voter suppression, just on January 5th and also on November 3rd of 2020 in Georgia. I can't tell you how much voter suppression was done because as soon as we got that right to vote in 1965 and we elected some black people, but then we started seeing court decisions and you started seeing legislation that slowly whittled away that right to vote. And then finally, it got to the US Supreme Court in the case of Shelby County, Alabama versus Holder back in 2013, I think it was. And the Supreme Court decided that there was no need to have changes in voting processes approved by the Justice Department or a 3-judge panel in Washington, D.C. because of a coverage formula that they said was no longer applicable. The coverage formula set out which jurisdictions had a history of racist and voter suppressive tactics that kept black people from voting. And when the Supreme Court threw out that formula saying that it was outdated and no longer effective, then that opened the doors for those same jurisdictions, states, and localities with a history of voter suppression to go back and start doing the same things. And so that's what has been happening. And so the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, what it does, Reverend, would be to establish a new coverage formula that covers pretty much the entire United States of America and requires that any changes in voting processes has to be approved before it can take effect. And so things like moving a voting precinct on the eve of an election or closing down a voting precinct, combining them, or those kinds of tactics that are used would no longer be before they take effect. And so that would go to help us continue to be able to express our rights to vote in this country and to do so without suppression.
Thank you. We've got to get it. We've got to get it approved, and of course the 4 of us are obviously going to be supporters. But thank you for that picture of it. Charlie Rangel told me I went to New York to have lunch with him, and it was shortly after I had been elected. And I walked in, sat down at the table, and he said, "Cleaver, if you stick with me, I'll give you a tax break." The Ways and Means Committee is the tax committee, and Charlie Rangel chaired the Ways and Means Committee and was on the committee, I think, 40 years. Representative Evans is on the committee. He hasn't offered any of us a tax cut, I don't think, but we all are certainly open to it. But if he could talk, because that committee deals with the issue that we're going to also ask Representative Tlaib to talk about, and that is the stimulus that's coming up in we hope, in a short period of time through the Biden administration. One of the controversial issues that I want Representative Tlaib to talk about is the $1,400, $600, $1,400 $250 as some of the Republicans wanted. But if you could, Representative Evans, just kind of let everybody know the direction that at least the Democrats want to go as it relates to the stimulus.
Thank you for that question. When I came to Washington, the first committee and the only committee I wanted to be on was the Ways and Means Committee. Just by what you said, there are over 300 million Americans, and 140 are in poverty. 140 are in poverty. And it says to be that when you look at the district that I represent, there's about 23 or 24% poverty. And then when you take the covert, you take what has happened there and you put that together with the poverty, you devastated people of color. They're devastated. In the city that knows so much where it started, the fact that it's devastating. So when you think about it, just this last year, we have voted for the CARES Act, which was $2.2 trillion. We voted for the economic relief, which was about 900 million. And now with President-elect Biden and Senator-elect that we will be voting for. That's the aspect of it. And when you talk about housing, one of the greatest initiatives, the low-income housing tax credit, which we just passed the bill to position low-income housing tax credit for the first time. So if you talk about economic opportunity, economic wealth, Brother Charlie Rangel knew exactly what to do. And I hope that was a good lunch because he knew what to do about the importance of the Ways and Means Committee and how it can affect and make a difference in people's lives, particularly Black folks. There are now 6 members on the 6 African Americans that are now on the Ways and Means Committee. 6 African Americans. That's symbolic, as you know for yourself, of what that will mean and how we can shape and make a difference in the poverty aspect that Dr. King talked about, in the need of dealing with the aspect of making a transformation. So 6 African Americans, what Dr. King couldn't imagine, envision at this particular time that 6 of us would sit on this particular committee. And when you talk about housing, you talk about tax policy, you talk about the kinds of things that could have impact and make a difference. And I believe under the Biden-Harris administration that we have real bold opportunity to be bold. We can take a page from what the chairman of the Federal Reserve said, go big and go bold. That's what my feeling is. Just as President-elect Biden announced a 1.9 billion true and setting the groundwork for when he gives his speech in February. For we are positioned. We fortunately to the great state of Georgia, we're in the majority. Fortunately to Detroit, if you understand the similar, you connect Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia. You know, Dr. King had the vision ahead of things because you look at Detroit and you look at Georgia, you look at Philadelphia. You just think when good Frank Hank was talking about that Voting Rights Act back in 1965, look at what that has laid in 2021 in Detroit, in Chicago, and Philadelphia. Look at that connection. Look at what has happened in the empowerment. So a lot of that hostility you see taking place in Washington, D.C. is a resentment because they can see that things are going to change. As Sam Cooke would say, things are going to change. So the fact of the matter, we are in the position which in return the effect.
Senator Lindsey Graham said that $1,200 to people who are out there struggling is too much. Representative Lee, what say you?
I loved how you set it up for me. Look, I think we all represent communities, including Kansas City. All of us are aware that other countries have done multiple reoccurring payments during this global pandemic. We're talking about millions of people. A third of our neighbors couldn't pay rent. And one of the things that I worry about as we now begin the distribution of vaccines, is that, there's this now mentality among many of our colleagues that, okay, we have a vaccine, everything's great now, but the vaccine can't fix the savings bank account. Guess what? When the moratorium is over with, which we all support moratoriums, we want that relief, but the moratorium for water shutoffs in some of our states is going to be expiring. The eviction moratorium is expiring. Many of our school districts alone are also telling us, we know the revenue is going to be lower. We're going to have the struggle. But one of the things, and Rev, you know this, it's in many of our faiths as we promote, but there's a human dignity when you're able to give direct payments. But not only that, if you don't believe it's a moral issue and that government needs to center on people during a global pandemic, we also know economists tell us this. When we bail out people, we don't save the money, we spend it. We spend and help our local economies, local businesses. My local restaurants, the last time they met with me a few months ago, put down on the list, Rashida, we need reoccurring direct payments. And I said, really? That's great that you all are pursuing this, as well as payroll and PPP program and everything. And they said, yes, because we know that by investing in people, that allows our business to be able to continue to thrive. And as someone that supports, our chairwoman of Financial Services Committee has been a champion on rental relief. And helping even some of our smaller landlord and property owners, which is good. But even she and I talk about this. It has been very difficult for communities like ours that many of the landlords don't even have lease agreements, documentation that actually gets them to the point where they actually qualify. And that's what's happening in my district, to qualify for some of these benefits. But direct payment has been powerful. We watched, I think it was around June or July, the elevating people out of poverty instantly, just with the $1,200, the first $1,200 jumped. And economists and we have the truth on our side when you see that, because when we do corporations, and Rev, this, corporations kind of hoard it, they keep it. They still let go of our residents' workplace. I saw the airlines do it. I saw many of the industries do it in the corporate welfare line and said, please bail us out because this is about jobs. And then they still let go of our neighbors. When we do direct payments, we are doing right, because we know that millions of our neighbors won't have a job to go back to. Much of what they're struggling with now is not to their fault. This is a global pandemic. And when you see countries like Canada and places in Europe where they are the multiple payments by now, the $600 that folks got, you talk to any of my residents in Detroit or even Wayne County communities, they'll tell you that it's already been spent because they were relying on us helping them months ago. So much of what we were able to give, that small amount, yes, it was something, but we know that it wasn't sustainable. And so I think it's really important. And I put down the Automatic Boost to Communities Act, which myself and Congresswoman Jayapal and others have been pushing for, is a way forward, I believe, that is going to help stabilize our economy. This will help push us away and against another housing crisis and so much more, because we know that residents will take that and they will pay off their rent that's due, student loans, whatever that the case is. And we are going to have layers of relief, but direct payments, I want to reiterate, direct payments are so critical. They need to be as equal to distribution of vaccine. And I think we can see a tremendous difference, not only in our economy, but also in the welfare of our people that we represent. It's the minimum of what we need to be able to do, especially, again, this is a global public health crisis. Once in our lifetime do we experience something like this. And it's so critically important, again, that we do direct payments.
You are so on target on that. No country in the history of the world has collapsed because they helped their people in a time of trouble. No country. Something else you had said, I was on the committee in 2008 when we had the economic collapse. It was dealing mostly with housing, where they had securitized bad housing, bad mortgages, and sold them on the markets. and they were worth nothing. We bailed out the banks. Most of the banks took the money, put it in a wheelbarrow, put it in a safe and locked the door, and went on and did business. And we bailed out the automobile industry, and putting all of that money into all of the private sector. You would think that they would have some kind of a change of how they would operate and how they would lean toward, the people who needed help, but that didn't happen. But I think it would be a miscarriage of justice if we finished here tonight without talking about impeachment in Washington in about 45 hours. So we'll start with Representative Johnson. I think people would want to know our position on and our feelings about impeachment and the after effect of it.
Well, thank you, Reverend Cleaver. I can't think of a more amoral or immoral individual who has held high office during my lifetime that can approach the amorality or the lack of morality of Donald Trump and those who follow him. They purport to be religious people, but how can they be that way if they tolerate a man who lies, cheats, steals, and his policies have resulted in the killing of hundreds of thousands of innocent Americans because of his desire to play politics above taking care of the people. His hands are bloody, and this man is not a person who moral people follow. If you follow Donald Trump and you claim to have morals, then you have turned a blind eye to everything that your parents taught you. And we'll chalk it up to you being temporarily insane or lacking of sound mind. And we are praying for you sincerely, not out of spitefulness or anything negative. We are praying for you to be able to see the light, to see truth, to see the humanity that exists all around you, not just yourself, but thinking about everyone else who is around you, because we're all in it together. And so, impeachment came to Donald Trump because he lied, cheated, stole. He lied and cheated and stole the election from Hillary Clinton by using foreign interference to his benefit, keeping it quiet, not revealing that something was wrong. He took advantage of it, he gained, and he was impeached for it by the House, but the Senate let him off. They acted as if there was nothing wrong with him calling the president of Ukraine and trying to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to hurt Joe Biden so that he could beat Joe Biden in the election. Well, it didn't work, and he got impeached for what he did. And we were told that we don't think he's going to do it again. That's why we're not going to convict him and remove him in the Senate. We think he's learned his lesson and he won't do it again. Well, Donald Trump is the type of guy that you give him an inch and he takes a mile. These little things that our parents taught us about when we were smaller. You allow wrong to happen, it's going to continue until you call it. And so that's what happened. We get all the way a year later, he calls the governor of Georgia and tries to strong arm him to change the votes so that he can somehow become the victor out of an election that he lost. And so he ends up, after doing that, he then sends a horde of people to the Capitol to stop the counting of the of the votes. He incited riotous conduct. He incited insurrection against this country. And those people came down there, and as a result, 5 people died, scores of people injured, some hospitalized, 2 police officers have died, property damage, and he was impeached for that, for inciting insurrection. It was a quick decision that was made to bring forward the charges. Why wait when everybody could see what happened? We all know what happened. I mean, it doesn't take, you don't have to have gone to college or get a fancy degree in order to know right from wrong. And he sent people with his language down there to do what they did, and he's responsible for it. And so he was impeached for it. And soon, Reverend, within the next few days, our leader, Nancy Pelosi, will transfer the article of impeachment to the Senate, and the Senate will then be called upon to try that case. And when you try a case with the victim, who also witnessed the event and is the decision maker, it's a no-brainer. What should happen? Trump should be, even though he will have left office by that time, he should be convicted, and the Senate should then vote based on that conviction to require that he never hold high public office or any public office, federal office again. That's what this trial will be about, because we know what happened, and it'll be about whether people in high places have the courage, Reverend, to do the right thing. And that's what it's all about. It's so simple. It's really just human behavior. It's right and wrong. It's what our parents taught us. It's what we learned in Sunday school. It's what we learned on Sundays from scripture. And any religion that you practice today will support right over wrong, and will condemn wrong and uphold righteousness. And so that's what our United States Senate is going to be called upon to do. And I hope that it will be successful for the sake of the nation.
Amen. Representative Evans.
Yeah, Cleveland. When one thing that affected me a great deal is something the great late John Lewis said. And he said that he is unfit to be president of the United States. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I just got elected 2016. And he says, I'm not even going to his announcement, his swearing in. That comment left a great deal on me. And that comment left a great deal coming from the city of Philadelphia, where no one is above the law, no one. And I think Brother Hank did a good job in laying out all the particulars, so I won't go through that. But the two things was John Lewis and no one is above the law.
Yeah.
That more affected anything I've seen. So when our good friend Al Green and Maxine Waters back in 2018, I've been consistently about that he needs to be removed from this office. And I believe the fact that he has shown and demonstrated to all of us that he is not fit to be president of the United States. He has shown it through his behavior, shown it through his actions, shown it in every way you can think of. Such contempt that he has, such contempt. He doesn't even think he has to adhere to the basic responsibility about that, to even think about that. But I think that he was completely shocked. And I'm very proud of all the members who stood tall. And I know you didn't didn't start out that way, but you stood tall in the last couple of years and shown that he is not above the law. His behavior needs to be held accountable. And I believe we have shown and demonstrated. Now, the question will be, will the Senate do the responsible action? Will the Senate take the action because of his behavior and that he needs to be held accountable? He never needs to be in elected office again in this country, never. And those who have contributed to his behavior in the Senate or the House should also be held accountable. I think it's unacceptable with that kind of behavior that he has demonstrated, that it just goes across the line. So I've been clear about it, that he should be impeached, voted for that, advocated for that, think that he's no good for this country and sends the wrong message. We know full well that this country is not perfect, and we know full well there's an awful lot of things that have to change. But one of the first things would be is getting rid of Trump, which would send a message to everybody that he is not in our collective interest.
Amen. We'll close out Chairman Fields with my sister, Rashida Tlaib. Give us any your picture of Donald Trump and impeachment.
Yeah, I'll be graceful for you, Rev. But I'm going to fake it a little bit. But really, the truth is the fact that I think people need to realize, many of us, especially my district, was calling for impeachment of this corrupted, lawless president from the beginning. This is a person that has not upheld the United States Constitution. Much of what he was doing out of the Oval Office was being a corporate CEO, benefiting the Trump organization over and over again, from the pay to play that we were smelling from far, of having people staying at the Trump Hotel, to having our military planes landing in airports in the middle of somewhere so that his resorts can benefit from that. So it was just endless benefit of himself and making money off of the back and the pain of many of our neighbors. I want to explain just how bad January 6th was. And what I mean by that is it could have been so much worse. I mean, you have a president that spoke to a crowd. And please, if you do have time, I would urge you to listen to his speech. Erected a noose to hang the vice president of the United States, and who else? I don't know. We already know they had plans to kidnap members of the United States Congress. We know they were hunting for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They left human feces throughout the Capitol halls. They destroyed a poster of John Lewis in the hallways, just trying to commemorate, to remember him and just a tribute to him. They flew the Confederate flag throughout the Capitol halls. They were violent. They came there with the direction of the most powerful person, not only in the country, but the world. And he did it in our faces blatantly. And for all of us, we can't rely on what the Senate's going to do. We, members of the House, this is the power we have to push back on a man that is imminently dangerous to our country. He is setting a dangerous precedent that if we don't do it again, even if we have to impeach him twice, 3 times, it doesn't matter. The point is, you can't sit back and say he only has a few hours, because we know from our intelligence and security briefings that he was still a threat. He still is a threat with the last 45 hours left, him being president. And I want to differ, Rev. I think he still continues to be a threat after he leaves office. And so we need to make sure that he is held accountable. Because I'll tell you, and it's not just because I'm Muslim, but any of us on here, any of us panelists, if we did what he did, even remotely close, there would be no hesitation to remove us from office. So to all my colleagues who gave tours to the Capitol, who enabled, who spoke to the crowd, who continues to not follow the rules of the House and continues to push back, because it's not only a building, y'all. The Capitol is not just, it is a building, but it's also our democracy. It's at the center of our country and how it works. They came with an attack. And so I really urge all of us to not only focus on getting the Senate to impeach him and convict him when we send the articles, but we also have to invoke the 14th Amendment on many of our colleagues. Because again, if it was myself or anybody else, there would be no hesitation at all of the actions on their part. And again, it is a miracle, Rev, that it wasn't worse than what it was. And yes, 5 people died, but I think Hank's right. There were way more people that are connected to the violence that he was inciting and inspoon, and the white privilege that we saw. Because I'll tell you, the uprising Black Lives Matter, the women who came in March for their public health, they got militarized aggression. They were completely pushed against this. This was completely different. Through the reporting that's coming out, was that white supremacy, white privilege was at the center, and many people from within were participating and enabling it. And that's something that we need to absolutely hold, again, our colleagues accountable that continue to support that kind of violence. It's very, very important.
Well, thank you all very much. As all of you Kansas Cityans can see, I invited some very quiet and people who don't have strong opinions on anything. So I'll try to do better at another date. I want to thank my colleagues. They are amazing. And as you can tell, they're going to stand up for people in need. The people that Dr. King accepted that bullet for on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel on April 4th. These are the people that are still struggling out here to bring that dream into realization. And I want to thank all of you who've been here tonight, as well as those who provided enormously great leadership in pulling this program together. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I am the Reverend Nia Chandler on staff with SCLC Greater Kansas City. And I'm so excited about the words, the powerful words that these congressmen and this powerful congresswoman shared so passionately. They are so committed to serving the beloved community and positioned to change America for the better. And they all have professed being encouraged by the ministry of Congressman Cleaver, saying that when their backs were against the wall, that they leaned on scripture. And so on tonight, as I consider our call to action, I too am drawn to scripture, the book of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 18 and verse 22, where the Lord is saying to Moses, you've not come to Mount Sinai, that mount that if you touched it, you would burn with fire, but rather you've come to Mount Zion and to an innumerable company of angels. It is this scripture that gives me hope. Though we witnessed horrific events and violence a few weeks ago at our nation's capital, the center of our democracy, with our national security even now taking steps to secure the perimeter in preparation for the inauguration, and at capitals all across this nation, I still remain hopeful. In my spiritual discernment, I'm led to say that the words of our national founder, the prolific and matchless prophet, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., before he was assassinated, had come to Mount Zion when he said, I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. I keep hearing in my ear the voice of God, Yahweh, who is telling us that we have not come to Mount Sinai, but we also, like Dr. King, have come to a mountain. That mountain just very well may be Mount Zion, where we see the promised land. The visionary Dr. King made a statement that was so prophetic in nature, grounded in policy and practice, which offers guideposts to those in this century and beyond who hope for that beloved community and know it is each of our duties to ensure that it appears. As Congressman Dwight Evans said, the Honorable John Lewis, he shared sentiments with Dr. King, said, if you see something, you're to do something. We've come to Mount Zion. Congressman Evans said that we have to be more dedicated and rededicate ourselves to bettering America. I might tell you tonight, we've come to Mount Zion. Congressman Rashida Tlaib spoke passionately about King and quoted his words, if America does not use her resources of wealth to end poverty and make it possible for all God's children to have the basic necessities of life, she too will go to hell. I declare to you tonight, we are not at Mount Sinai, but yet we've arrived at Mount Zion. During our opening, the president of SCLC Greater Kansas City, the Reverend Dr. Vernon Percy Howard Jr., on behalf of the board chairman, Attorney Wesley Fields, and the entire SCLC board, presented a moral vision for Kansas City, a way in which we can dedicate and rededicate ourselves to bettering America. And so on tonight, I say again that we've not come to Mount Zion. So we invite you to be a part of this movement and unite with any and all faith partners across religious boundaries who share our principles of the beloved community, of justice for all, and of peace. We invite all people of all backgrounds and all regions of our community and amongst all sectors hoped for but not yet realized by all the people of goodwill. I say on tonight, by the summons of the one whose name we bear, Jesus Christ, and in the fulfillment of the mountaintop experience had by our national founder, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 3rd of 1968, we so move that Kansas City will ascend and arise to the mountaintop and see a vision that lifts all of the citizens of Kansas City to justice and equity. The Kansas City at the Mountaintop movement is purposed to do mobilizing and organizing around these several things: end to homeless and a just housing with dignity for all, high quality equity education for every child, K through 12, real full employment and a living wage for every worker who takes the personal responsibility to work, a transformation of a racist Kansas City Police Department, and an effort to ensure reforms are passed here in Kansas City as they are in other places throughout this nation. Collective voting power that's demonstrated in favor of candidates who are dedicated to the full restoral of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and full reparations of Black people in America. We're asking you in this call to action to join with SCLC of Greater Kansas City to sign up for this mighty movement, KC at the Mountaintop. For more information, go to SCLC-GKC.org. And in order, oh God, that your kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven, we are at Mount Zion. Thank you.
Good evening, Kansas City family. I am Molly Pons, the chair of the annual scholarship and the Mountain Movers. This year we did things a little bit different, and I have the privilege of announcing to you the renaming of our scholarship. It is with great pleasure that I have witnessed a dedicated, humble champion of the people, Mr. Taylor Fields. And as of 2021, our scholarship will be renamed in kudos of his great work, the Attorney Taylor Fields Esquire Dreamkeeper Scholarship. Each year, one of his greatest is hearing how they plan to take on the world in their own way. Our annual scholarship is aimed at students who are passionate and dedicated in keeping Dr. King's nonviolent activism and progressive vision alive. Attorney Fields has continued to dedicate his personal and professional life to serving our community, fighting against discriminatory laws, and investing in our next generation. As a past recipient myself, I can contest to his investment and inspiration and leadership, having had the opportunity to work with him on several community projects. As a soon-to-be law school graduate myself, I hope to be a fraction of the lawyer leader that he is, with his kindness, his integrity, unwavering morals, and dedication to all those around him. Part of our dedication to investing in our next generation is also to provide a safe space to grow and enhance individuals' young voice through defending democracy, making peace, and advancing justice in such a pivotal time in our nation. Our scholarship is open to all high school seniors in the greater Kansas City area from January 18th to March 18th of 2021. For more information and qualifications on our scholarship, please visit our website, and under the Mountain Rivers tab, you will find the detailed instructions on how to apply and the qualifications. And I want to leave you with Dr. King's words, as we have heard so many of his inspirations this evening. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Stay safe, Kansas City.
Greetings and God bless you, Kansas City. It is once again that SCLC advances to recognize and acknowledge the great gifts and the great contributions that local leaders here in Kansas City have made toward those principles and results of justice and peace and fulfillment of the beloved community here in Kansas City. And we are grateful and thankful this evening to be able to acknowledge two awardees who have made such significant contribution to the civil and human rights of Kansas Cityans over the course of the last year and in recent years as well. We're proud to announce that the recipient of the SCLC-GKC Community Service Award is Cecilia Belzer-Patton. Cecilia is the principal and culture curator of Just Systems, a capacity building and sustainability consulting firm that specializes in restorative practices, specifically race, equity, diversity, and inclusion development, also focusing on restorative and social justice framework and implementation, curriculum development, and strategic systems change. As a veteran educator, the core compass in which he views the world is strong conviction in restorative practices, racial, educational, and health equity, and social justice. Just Systems provides workshops, community development, organizational development, transformative leadership coaching, lectures, and grassroots strategies development designed to build equity and create systems change. Cecilia is committed to equity, cultural proficiency, urban education, and student, family, and community empowerment, and is active in her community, building justice on all fronts, which is exemplified in her roles as the Missouri Jobs with Justice Champions organizer, political director for the No on 3 Clean Missouri campaign, and the inclusion and equity director for healthcare for Missouri Medicaid expansion. We should know that recently, this year, that was late last year, the state of Missouri did not, prior to this fall, acknowledge the gift given by the successes of the presidential tenure of former President Obama and refused to accept Medicaid expansion in the state of Missouri. It was Cecilia Belzer-Patton, who was political campaign director here in the Kansas City area, that led the push right here in this area to ensure that Medicaid expansion was a reality right here in Kansas City. For that, hundreds of thousands of now individuals across the state now have health care that did not have it when 2020 began. We believe that that is an effort and an action that certainly merits Cecilia Belzer-Patton the Community Service Award in 2021. Cecilia says to us, the call to alert her of this award came on January the 5th, and she is naming this particular award after her mother, Evelyn Belzer. She dedicates this award to her mother. Cecilia says her mother, Evelyn Belzer, never gave up on her, even when others did. We congratulate Cecilia Belzer-Patton for this outstanding award. Our second recipient of awards tonight during the SCLC 2021 MLK celebration is presented to Mr. Dwayne Williams, President and CEO of the 12th Street Heritage Development Corporation. Mr. Williams receives this evening the President's Award for his continued efforts and action around ensuring that affordable housing, the refurbishment of existing housing, and that economic development continues to thrive here in the urban core and specifically along the 12th Street corridor here on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri. Dwayne Williams has over 30 years of managerial experience in operations with strong interpersonal, organizational, and communication skills. It is these skills that have earned him a reputation as a skilled communicator with a demonstrated ability to excel in various environments. In 2010, Mr. Williams added a youth mentoring program to the expanding role of the 12th Street Heritage Development Corporation. To date, this program has mentored thousands of youth in the urban core, about 1,500 youth a year. This in turn has resulted in Mr. Williams being sought after all over the country to participate and provide youth mentoring workshops for other cities. Additionally, Mr. Williams started a reentry program for individuals who have been recently released from the prison system. The program helps these individuals transition back into society. In 2013, the 12th Street Heritage Reentry Program was recognized in an article titled Prison to Workforce Pipeline in the Seventh-day Adventist Outlook magazine. In addition to this, Mr. Williams has continued to bolster the economic development in this city, job opportunities, and increased economic base for those in the urban core and on the east side. He is currently participating through his leadership of the 12th Street Heritage Development Corporation in various development projects within the Kansas City area. Some of the projects include a 24-unit senior living housing project in the Kansas City Metro, and the 197-unit Jazz Hill Apartments development renovation project on Paseo Boulevard, and a future development endeavor for which Dwayne will be 128-unit housing project developer called Heritage Lofts at Berkeley Riverfront. Today, SCLC of Greater Kansas City in the 2021 MLK celebration commends and congratulates Dwayne Williams for the President's Award in 2021. We want to continue to thank all of our sponsors and all of our supporters at SCLC who have made such a difference in the organization's continued efforts to move forward with advancing justice and peace in our community. To all of our corporate sponsors, to all of our special supporters of this particular 2021 MLK celebration, and certainly to all of our members and all of the boards of directors and all of those with SCLC who support the year-round ongoing work of justice and peace in the beloved community being realized right here in Kansas City. We thank you on behalf of our chairman, Wesley Fields Esquire, and on behalf of the entire board of directors. We encourage you, if you desire to give to SCLC-GKC, don't forget, you can go to SCLC-GKC.org to donate. And also know that we will be able to continue to build power, not for hate, not for violence, not for armed revolution, not for economic exploitation, not for the suppression of voting, but for voting rights, for the defense of democracy, for economic equity in education, and for jobs to be available for all Americans who are willing to work, and certainly those jobs to carry a living wage. Continue to work with us as we build toward justice and peace in the beloved community right here in Kansas City. Please stay with us. We have the benediction from the Honorable U.S. Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver, and then afterwards, our final inspirational music coming your way.
And now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus Christ, that great shepherd of the sheep, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good, that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight. Through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever and ever and ever. Amen.
Dr. Vernon Howard, President of Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City, and spokesperson for the petitioners for a petition initiative to raise the minimum wage here in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm president of SCLC, represent the board of directors of SCLC, along with a host of other civil rights groups and organizations, including the Urban Summit, the Urban League, the NAACP, the Baptist Ministers Union, the National Black United Front, and the Human Dignity and Economic Justice Coalition, along with a host of other neighborhood groups and grassroots organizations who feel and see and hear and experience the pain of working poor people in Kansas City every day. They are in our pews, they are in our food pantries, they are in our social service agencies. They are requesting help and aid to pay their rent, to keep their hot water running, to keep roofs over their head, and to keep shoes on the feet of their children. And their cries have come to us, who are faith-based and community-based organizations, who are simply asking the city government to do what's right, and that is to help lift poor working people out of poverty. We believe that if a person is willing to take the personal responsibility towards a wage that can help that person take care of their children and their families.
To the king we've been shouting from the lighthouse, cause they've been doing bad things in the dark. Took the pennies from the poor man's bottle, put the bottle in the poor man's heart. Tell the king we about to take back the kingdom. Tell the king we about to take what's ours. Tell the king we about to take back the kingdom. Tell the king we declare wage war. Please tell me what is the price to pay. I've been working all day. Don't I deserve a living wage? Tears have been running all down my face. I've been working all day. My water bill ain't been paid. Tell the king we about to take back the kingdom. Tell the king we about to take what's ours. Tell the king we about to take back the kingdom. Tell the king we declare wage war. Please tell me what is the price to pay. I've been working all day. Don't I deserve a living wage? Tears have been running all down my face. I've been working all day. My water bill ain't been paid. Tell the king we're about to take back the kingdom.
Dr. Vernon Howard, President of Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City, and spokesperson for the petitioners for a petition initiative to raise the minimum wage here in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm president of SCLC, represent the board of directors of SCLC, along with a host of other civil rights groups and organizations, including the Urban Summit, the Urban League, the NAACP, the Baptist Ministers Union, the National Black United Front, and the Human Dignity and Economic Justice Coalition, along with a host of other neighborhood groups and grassroots organizations who feel and see and hear and experience the pain of working poor people in Kansas City every day. They are in our pews, they are in our food pantries, they are in our social service agencies. They are requesting help and aid to pay their rent, to keep their hot water running, to keep roofs over their head, and to keep shoes on the feet of their children. And their cries have come to us, who are faith-based and community-based organizations, who are simply asking the city government to do what's right, and that is to help lift poor working people out of poverty. We believe that if a person is willing to take the personal responsibility to work, then that person is a